उसका क्लास में। Started? Okay. जी. नहीं, किंग आर्थर जो आपका क्वेश्चन है, एक तो ठीक है, वी आर रेडी टू स्टार्ट द सेकंड क्लास, पार्ट 2 स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं. So before we go for other things, we have a question. Question is Arthur's 24 qualities of an ideal gentleman, right? And your question is that 12 knights had 12 virtues. तो आपका जो क्वेश्चन है वो क्या है एग्जैक्टली कि 24 virtues for Arthur, 12 virtues for knights. तो Arthur is the Arthur is having the topmost quality of all those things. So Arthur is at the top. Arthur जो है, he is the leading figure of top 24 qualities, and even if out of those qualities, these 12 knights, they are the second level people. So they are the best people after Arthur. If Arthur is not there, Sir Gawain represents virtue of commitment, virtue of promise. But if you say in Arthur and Gawain, who is the best? Arthur is best. But after Arthur, Gawain. क्योंकि ये इसके सबऑर्डिनेट्स है ना, जूनियर्स हैं ये, तो इनकी अपनी क्वालिटीज तो हैं, बट ये सब क्वालिटीज का फाइनल फिगर जो है वो आर्थर ही रहेगा. These 12 people with 12 virtues, are very important. When I will teach you Edmund Spenser. Edmund Spenser wrote Shepherd's Calendar. Shepherd's Calendar, he talks about 12 people singing 12 songs. So these 12 people are actually 12 shepherds. 12 shepherds based on the 12 round table people, and they are singing 12 songs celebrating 12 months. So these people will repeatedly appear. Then Edmund Spenser's Fairy Queen. Fairy Queen will have 6 knights representing 6 virtues. इनके वन बाय वन आप नाम पढ़ोगे और सबकी एक एक क्वालिटी आपको याद रखनी पड़ेगी, बिकॉज दे आस्क दिस क्वेश्चन इन एग्जाम टू मैच द फॉलोइंग. तो आपको देखना पड़ेगा रेड क्रॉस नाइट. सो रेड क्रॉस नाइट की जो वर्च्यू थी, वर्च्यू ऑफ होलीनेस, ही वाज अ रिलीजियस मैन. सर ग्वाइन, वर्च्यू ऑफ कमिटमेंट. फिर इसमें एक लेडी है, लेडी ब्रिटो मार्टिस, वर्च्यू ऑफ चेस्टिटी. फिर 2 लोग आएंगे फ्रेंडशिप के लिए, सर टेलेमन, सर कैम्बल, वर्च्यू ऑफ फ्रेंडशिप. सर आर्टिगल, वर्च्यू ऑफ जस्टिस. सर कैलिडोर, वर्च्यू ऑफ कर्टसी. आपको एज इट इज याद रखने पड़ेंगे, राइट. सो ये जो 12 वर्च्यूज हैं, दीज आर कॉमन फॉर आर्थर. सो आर्थर इज बेस्ट इन दीज 12 ऑल्सो, एंड ही हैज हिज एक्स्ट्रा 12 वर्च्यूज बिकॉज ही इज आर्थर. ठीक है. और कोई क्वेरी किसी की, कंसर्न, बिकॉज वी आर गोइंग टू वाइंड अप एंग्लो सेक्शन लिटरेचर. नेक्स्ट 1 hour विल बी एबल टू फिनिश इट. एंग्लो सेक्शन आपका आज खत्म हो जाएगा. तो इफ यू हैव एनी क्वेश्चन लेट मी नो. नो क्वेश्चंस? ओके. सो नाउ गेट बैक टू द क्लास. Another most important question which is asked from Anglo section is language. This is the journey of language. One of the most confusing question. 7 to 8 times this question has been asked. Sometimes they ask you in a direct way, what was the language of Anglo section, what was the language of Anglo-Normans. Sometimes they ask you the pair. Sometimes they ask you in a confusing way. They'll simply say, English language took a lot of words from other languages. So what are those Anglo-Saxon languages? कहाँ से words आए हैं? First thing, point to be noted. And this is the time duration. Anglo-Saxons, Anglo-Normans, and then modern day England language. First, Latin. So this is actually not purely Latin, it is Old Germanic language. Old Germanic dialect. Language of Saxons and Anglos. Mixed language. Old Germanic language. Latin style. Point to be noted. So if they ask you that the book was written around 1890, what was the language of the book? It is easy. Before 1066, before the French people came, whatever they used to write was in Old Germanic language or in Latin. ठीक है, बहुत आसान है. ऐसे क्वेश्चंस पूछ चुके हैं वो, ऐसे क्वेश्चंस पहले आ चुके हैं. Why it was in Latin before 1066? Before 1066, why it was in Latin? Because so French were not there. The French आए ही नहीं, तो फ्रांस की लैंग्वेज कहाँ से आएगी? If they ask you what was the language before the Britishers came to India, so you will not say English. English came after the Britishers came. So just like that, before 1066, Norman conquest, Normans came from Normandy, France, French language. Before this, Old Germanic dialect or Latin. If they ask easy question, they'll say Latin. If they want you to be confused, they'll come with Old Germanic dialect. ठीक है? और इससे भी पहले अगर पूछें कि ओवरऑल ब्रिटेन्स की क्या लैंग्वेज थी, दैट वी ऑलरेडी हैव रिटन, ब्रिटोनिक या ब्रिटोनिक या सेल्टिक. If they ask Brittonic and Celtic, but Brittonic, Celtic, they were very small scale language, dialect. Latin or Old Germanic, it was a big scale language. Then the French people, Normans, they come by 1066. They mix up here. So when they mix up here from a different culture, they brought their language. Old French dialect, you can also call it Old Norman dialect. ओल्ड फ्रेंच डायलेक्ट, ओल्ड नॉर्मन डायलेक्ट. नॉर्मन्स की लैंग्वेज फ्रेंच थी. सो इन इंग्लैंड, in modern day England, the French language influenced the French words. It came after Norman conquest 1066. पेपर में क्वेश्चंस आ चुके हैं. They can also ask you to set them in order. पहले कौन सा आया? And then after French, English. English will come by 1362. यहाँ पे आएगा. Then English. So now you know the development of language. Latin, French, English. ये पेपर में क्वेश्चन था that in English maximum vocabulary has been taken from these languages. Option Latin, French. Option German, this, Greek, and that. So you have to pick it. The right answer is Latin and French. Why? French was immediate part of language. तो यहाँ से develop हुआ English, and already Latin was there. ठीक है? Clear है? Any questions? Okay. So please don't forget Latin, French, English. Old Germanic language, old Norman French language, and old English. Now come back to kings. Then we go for books. Because sometimes they have asked questions from kings and we cannot afford to lose those questions. The first thing, King Alfred. जी, ये आपका एलिजाबेथन में आएगा. एक्चुअली ग्रेट वॉवल शिफ्ट जो है ना, ये एक स्टडी है. इट इज अ स्टडी बाय ऑटो जेस्पर्सन. ग्रेट वॉवल शिफ्ट इज अ स्टडी डन बाय ऑटो जेस्पर्सन वेयर ही स्टडीज language from Latin, from Anglo-Saxons to Elizabethan. He studies the early development of English language. That is called Great Vowel Shift. That starts from Anglo-Saxons and goes till Elizabethan. Otto Jespersen की study है. I'll teach you this minor reference आएगा. Normally paper में इसका सिर्फ title आता है. ये linguistic reference में आएगा. When I'll teach you Unit 5. Otto Jespersen's Great Vowel Shift. एक चीज देखो, आपको बताता हूँ जो बहुत अच्छा क्वेश्चन था. Who asked me that question? You? हाँ, बहुत अच्छा क्वेश्चन था ये. There were some great writers and they believed that Latin is the only language to write literature. They were writers, they believed that if you're writing literature, write only in Latin, not in English. Milton has written in Latin. Milton के बहुत सारे pamphlets Latin में हैं. बाइबल पहले हिब्रू में थी, फिर फर्स्ट ट्रांसलेशन लैटिन में था. फ्रांसिस बेकन यूज्ड टू राइट इन लैटिन. इस बार पेपर में क्वेश्चन भी था बेकन का, बहुत आसान क्वेश्चन था. इससे अलावा और कई ऐसे राइटर्स थे. दे यूज्ड टू राइट पैम्फलेट्स, वर्क्स, थिंग्स इन लैटिन. व्हाई दे सपोर्टेड लैटिन? एनीवन? बहुत बढ़िया. क्या क्लासिकल्स तो नहीं बोलेंगे क्योंकि क्लासिकल्स का तो कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं है. बट व्हाट यू हैव सजेस्टेड, यू डिड सम लैंग्वेज स्टडी, सो हाउ डू यू नो दैट लैटिन इज डेड लैंग्वेज? एंड ओके, जॉन ड्राइडन, he defended the use of Latin. That is called prepositional stand. Prepositional stand by John Dryden. ये until unless you go deep in linguistics आप नहीं पढ़ोगे, नॉर्मली बुक्स में नहीं मिलता है ये. प्रीपोजिशनल स्टैंड में जॉन ड्राइडन केम विद अ थ्योरी दैट व्हाट शी हैज सेड. आपका नाम क्या है? जैस्मिन. व्हाट जैस्मिन हैज सेड, इन लैटिन लैंग्वेज वी डू नॉट हैव प्रीपोजिशंस, नो प्रीपोजिशंस. सो इफ यू डू नॉट हैव प्रीपोजिशंस, इट्स अ डेड लैंग्वेज, नो क्रिएटिविटी रिक्वायर्ड, सो थिंग्स आर easy to understand. Prepositions create confusion. What do you mean by stand up? Stand up, you know, I'm sure. खड़े हो जाओ. Stand up, stand down, स्टेज से नीचे. What is stand down? एम इंग्लिश करके आए हो? एम इंग्लिश करके आए हो ना? निष्ठा सेव्ड यू, बचा लिया आपको. स्टैंड डाउन इज वट एवर डूइंग, स्टे, स्टॉप. somebody is trying to fight you, you want to say stop, say stand down. आप आर्मी ऑफिसर हो, आपकी मिलिट्री एडवांस करने वाले, आप रो दो, नो नो, स्टैंड डाउन. होल्ड, अब सोचो, स्टैंड अप और स्टैंड डाउन में कंफ्यूज हो जाते ना. I'm not an expert of Sanskrit, so I'll restrict myself, not make statement. जो नहीं आता उसके बारे में गलत नहीं बोलना चाहूँगा. तो I'll not compare Latin and Sanskrit क्योंकि मुझे दोनों के बारे में इतना अच्छा knowledge नहीं है. But Dryden's point was that Latin doesn't have any prepositions. Normally people get confused, you make mistake. Prepositions में in, over, above, into गलती करते हैं ना हम लोग. अरे अब कहीं दरवाजा होता है ना पुल और पुश, उसमें कंफ्यूज हो जाते हैं नॉर्मली लोग. याद नहीं आता ना क्या कह रहा है पुल एंड पुश. सोचो इतना पढ़ने के बावजूद पुल एंड पुश. सो वैसे ही यू डोंट नो समटाइम्स अबव, ओवर. सो ही सेड व्हाई टू यूज अ लैंग्वेज व्हिच इटसेल्फ इज नॉट श्योर. CUT cut, PUT put. So go for a language that doesn't create any confusion, and Latin is the one which is a dead language. Latin is the finest language for literature. Remember this point, that is called prepositional stand by John Dryden. याद रहेगा? Now come to King Alfred. King Alfred the Great. In 16th century, they started giving him the title the Great. In 16th century, they started calling King Alfred the Great the only Anglo-Saxon king to have the title the Great, and the first king to be converted to Christianity. King Alfred. इसके अलावा एक वाइकिंग्स का किंग था एथलबर्ट, वो भी कन्वर्ट हुआ था क्रिश्चियनिटी में. This man is the first writer of English. So sometimes he is also called father of Anglo-Saxon literature. You know, these concepts, father of poetry, father of this, father of that, they are simply based on individual opinions. Mostly ऐसे questions में आपको interview में trap कर लेंगे. He is the first person who tried to write in English, funded some translations, and was concerned that people should know English. That's why King Alfred is called the father of English language in Anglo-Saxon, father of English literature in Anglo-Saxons. Write down 2-3 lines for him. 1849 to 1899 was timing. 1849 to 1899. Timings will not be asked. Timings नहीं आती है. लिखो. Alfred devoted himself to learning Latin. Alfred devoted himself to the learning of Latin and English. This is the spelling of English. C लगा देना इसमें. English language was the language of. He started learning Latin and English because he was an Anglo-Saxon king. So he wanted to learn the local language. English language was the language of angel sin. These words you have to remember. Angel, CYNN. The race of English people, the local English people, they were called angel sin. Angels. Angel sin. The race of English people. He supported translations in English. He supported translations in English. In fact, modern day scholars say that he himself translated. So he himself is also called translator. Some people say that he supported translations in English. Some say that he himself was a translator. Now these are the old guys, so do not have any authorities. कोई authentication नहीं है हमारे पास confirm कर देने के लिए. एक और लिखो. He wrote a letter to bishops in 890. In 890 AD, he wrote a letter to bishops, the highest authority of church. This letter is available. This letter is available. He wrote a letter to bishops. In the letter, he lamented. In the letter, he lamented the poor state of learning. The poor state of learning among the Anglican, among the Angelsen. The poor state of learning. उसने कहा जो ये लोकल अंग्रेज हैं यानी कि इंग्लिश पीपल हैं इनका लर्निंग इज नॉट स्ट्रॉन्ग. He said the poor state of learning of these among these angels in, and said very few people can even read books in English. He said ये अपनी ही भाषा नहीं पढ़ पाते हैं. Very few people can even read books in English. This was something that he wrote in letter. The very few people can even read books in English. This was something that he addressed. Ligo, in his view, according to him, in his view, the shameful neglect of wisdom, the shameful neglect of wisdom, ये inverted comma single inverted comma wisdom. Like he says, the local people should at least respect their own language. They should be able to read. The shameful neglect of wisdom has contributed to the downfall of English people. The shameful neglect of wisdom has contributed to the downfall of the English people. Downfall of English people. There's a famous quote by him, but we will not write because they do not ask this much question. He says that the shameful neglect of wisdom has contributed to the downfall of the English people. Shameful neglect of the wisdom has contributed to the downfall of English people. Next king, King Ethelbert. Just one question, West Bengal set. King Ethelbert. The first person to write the Constitution of Anglo-Saxon or Code of Law. He is the first person to bring the rule book. He has been famously called Brett Walda. King Ethelbert is called Brett Walda. Brett Walda, ruler of Britain. Brett Walda, ruler of Britain. Brett Walda, ruler of Britain. The question is this, he is the first man who brought a rule book. कानून की कोई किताब. First ever law book. Code of Law. He is also called the first English king to convert to Christianity. He is also called the first English king to convert to Christianity. Confusions इसमें बहुत सारी हैं क्योंकि जैसे अल्फ्रेड भी है फर्स्ट किंग. अच्छा, इससे पहले हमने एथलबर्ट और एथेल्स्टन करा था, पर एथेल्स्टन से पहले भी अल्फ्रेड है. अभी ये जो एथलबर्ट है, when he will get converted to Christianity, his son will leave Christianity. His son will again return to paganism. Then living his life as a pagan for 20-25 years. At the end of his age, he'll again become a Christian. Conversion हो जाएगा. And King Ethelbert was killed, beheaded by his own family members. So just इतना याद रखना, this much. Code of Law. Clear? इसका जो बेटा था ना, he was a Christian first, that he wanted to marry his own stepmother. So it was a crime according to Christianity. So he converted himself again to pagan, became a pagan. Now, write down this. One of the most important contribution of Anglo-Saxon, the most important contribution of Anglo-Saxon society. Anglo-Saxons के क्या क्या development है वो लिख लो. Contribution of Anglo-Saxon people, Anglo-Saxon society. They are the first settlers. They established settlements. Settlers, when you establish your colonies. Language, custom, and dresses. They are the first people who experimented with culture, language. Culture में सारा आ जाएगा, dress, customs, coins. These are not important, but we are just doing these things to be 100% safe, right? Now let's go for the works. बस अभी आपके hardly 8-10 works हैं. We'll be done with these things. Anglo-Saxons से normally questions नहीं आते हैं, but sometimes they surprise. And when I teach, so it's not only NET, I make sure that all the set exams, all types of literary competitive exams, I check the papers. Because of students, I get papers. So if some literary exam is being conducted in Tamil Nadu, I will get the paper. हमारे पास PDF आ जाएगा. So I check it. So whatever the questions they have asked, most of them we have covered. Now we're going to deal with the books, and these books are again the same books which have been asked. अलग से extra पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. If you have market guide books, I have strongly recommended not to use any market guide book. कोई market guide books मत पढ़ना. They will give you 50 more names. There are market guide books. They will give you 50 plus names of Anglo-Saxon authors, books. No need. Because अगर आया तो एक question आएगा that will either be related to language, maybe Norman conquest because most repeated है, maybe King Alfred Bede or someone else. तो कोई जरूरत नहीं है, no need to read it. For example, इस बार एक भी question नहीं आया है, तो एक भी question नहीं है, but still everybody was prepared with those things. So we just have to be smart. Let's go for the books. The first and most important work which has been asked is Dream of the Rood. The question was that what is the dream of the rood and what is the rood? Repeated question hai. The poetry is anonymous. We have no authors. Authors का पता नहीं है. The dream of the rood में एक easy question आया था. The easy question was, what do you mean by the rood? Rood क्या होता है? Yes. Christ, cross. That's rood. What is rood? This wooden cross structure. तो यही याद रखना कि ड्रीम ऑफ द रूड में रूड क्या है. It's a question that has already been asked. Second question, what is the dream? So here this is one of the first philosophical work, religious and philosophy. Rood is crying. So when something dead has emotions, what is the style? Personification. Rood तो एक wooden structure है. So why this rood is crying? So that's personification that the rood is having life, it is crying. It was used as a tool to kill Christ. तो ये कह रहा है, this is my bad luck. This is my, the right word we can say, this is the most unfortunate thing that I was used to kill Christ. So why the rood is crying? Because somehow rood became the part of the tortures done to Jesus Christ, hanging, crucifying, killing. So he cries. The first emotion he has, cry. याद रखना dream of the rood में क्या है? He is crying in the dream. Then the second part of the poetry, he becomes happy. बताओ खुश क्यों हो वो? Second part में he is happy. Why?
Because such a great figure was killed on crucified. The blood was on.
So ये आंसर सही नहीं है कि इतना बड़ा आदमी मेरे साथ मर रहा है ऐसा वैसा. आंसर ये है, it's a philosophy, religious philosophy, that he says, I am no more the root, I am the Christ. The blood of Christ is all over me. So me and Christ have become one. वो कहता है लेकिन एक चीज है, the blood of the God, because I was the tool to crucify him. So his blood is all over me. I have become the part of his life. I am the Christ myself. तो कह रहा है इससे अच्छा जीवन क्या मिलेगा कि भगवान का ब्लड मेरे ऊपर है. I am the part of it. So that's philosophy. ठीक है, याद रखना ये. It's a very good work. सोचो बेचारे इसके ऑथर को पता ही नहीं है कि हम जानते ही नहीं उसके बारे में. इतना अच्छा वर्क लिख के चला गया वो. जॉर्डन पढ़ा है ना? जॉन फ्ली पढ़ा है? फ्ली वहां पे भी ऐसी फिलोसफी आएगी. योर ब्लड, माई ब्लड, बीज ब्लड, यूनिवर्स. So just like that, it says, fine, at least I'm used to be with Christ, and nobody can separate me from Christ. So please remember this: Dream of the Rood, anonymous writer, and all the details. Now there are some poetries. Wordsworth, Seafarer, Tale of Robin Hood. You know Robin Hood, the man who would plunder the rich and share the property in the poor. But it's yes, Chevy Chase, Nut Brown's Maid, Pearl. These are all long poetries with no authentication of the author. Anonymous. इनमें से किसी का कोई author confirm नहीं है. So the questions are normally asked that they'll give you 3 names with one exception, and they'll say pick the odd one out. Pick the one which was not written during Anglo sections. ऐसे नाम आते हैं. So यहाँ से ऐसे questions हैं. No need to go in the depth of any of these works. हाँ, All in the Nightingale, the first conversation, वो अलग से लिखवाऊंगा. हाँ, इनमें ही है लेकिन अलग से लिखवाऊंगा थोड़ा. उसमें लिखवाना है. All in the Nightingale, that is also anonymous, but that is having the first debate style poetry. तो उसका हमें स्टाइल लिखना है. There are many other works we have to write. Wives Lament लिखेंगे अभी. ये नाम इसलिए लिख लो. Most of these names have been asked in options. Wordsworth, Pearl. Now, as these poetries are unknown, anonymous, nobody knows about these. All of these poetries will be published in 1765 by Thomas Percy. This is how they ask questions in exam. Thomas Percy wrote Relics. इसमें सी मत लगाना, इसको ये वाला relic लिखना. Relics of Ancient English Literature. Thomas Percy in 1765 wrote Relics. What did he do? He simply picked anonymous poetry of Anglo-Saxons, compiled and published them together. Relics of Ancient English Poetry. Thomas Percy, famously called Percy's Relics. तो पेपर में ऐसे पूछेंगे कि इतनी सारी रैंडम पोइट्रीज को किसने पब्लिश किया था. Thomas Percy's Relics. Point to be noted, they'll simply say all of these poetries, anonymous poetries, were compiled by somebody. What is his name? So remember the name of the author. What is the name of the book or the timing? 1765, right? Clear? Now, let's go for the works. Put the title, Wife's Lament. Our lady, she's crying, she's lamenting. Shortest Anglo-Saxon poetry. It's in 53 lines. The Wife's Lament. सिर्फ एक बार क्वेश्चन है. Crying, रोना. 53 lines. So just remember, shortest Anglo-Saxon poetry available. Normally, Anglo-Saxon poetries are very long poetries, 10,000 lines, 40,000 lines. Pearl बहुत लंबी poetry है. They used to write in thousands. So please see this. The shortest poetry, 53 lines. Not important, but theme लिख लो. It's the wife whose husband is away. She is crying. उनका husband है, he has been sent to exile. Her husband is in exile and wife is crying. First poetry dealing with separation, emotions. Next. Cadman's hymns. After this, next. Cadman's hymns. The first person to write religious hymns in English. Cadman's hymns. The first person to write hymns, religious poetries in English. Short poetries written for God. The first religious writer also. You can call him the first religious writer. Then, Bede's famous death song. Bede wrote death song. Death song deals with philosophy, life, and life after death. It deals with philosophy, life, and life after death. इनकी डेप्थ में मत जाना अपने आप भी. अब अलग से पढ़ने के लिए अगर कोई बोलता भी ना कि आपको इसकी डेप्थ में जाओ, मत जाना. कोई जरूरत नहीं है. वी कैन टेक दैट रिस्क. ये आपका अगर इंटायर सिलेबस है ना, तो अभी आप यहां हो. ठीक है? कैन यू सी दैट? ये जो है ना, ये है एंग्लो सेक्शन. तो ऐसे मत सोचना कि मैं बहुत पढ़ना चाहता था, मुझे ज्ञान प्राप्ति का बहुत शौक था, तो मैंने बहुत ज़्यादा पढ़ लिया एंड आई कैन टीच एनीबडी एंग्लो सेक्शन. नो नीड. ठीक है? क्योंकि जब तक तुम यहाँ होगे ना, यहाँ तक तुम्हें अपने आप में लगेगा सिलेबस बहुत ज़्यादा है, और यहाँ तक जब पहुँचोगे ख़त्म करते करते, यहाँ तक तुम उठ जाओगे दुनिया से, दुनियादारी से बाहर हो जाओगे. इसलिए it is a lot to read, and I believe in teaching everything. So remember, we have to be smart enough to understand where to invest our energy and where to not. एक चीज देखो, whatever I'm teaching you, it's all available on Google. अपनी तरफ से तो मैं कुछ भी नहीं पढ़ा सकता ना. All I can do is I can give my explanations. I can bring my stories, I can connect it, I can explain things in a easy way. But all the writers, all the books, all the terminologies, all the publication date, it's all available on Google. Then, what to read and what not to read? क्या नहीं पढ़ना है और क्या पढ़ना है? Shakespeare has written 154 poetries. How many poetries you should read? कितने sonnets पढ़ने चाहिए 154 में से? At least for exam. 10? बस 150 में से सिर्फ 10. कितने पढ़ोगे कम से कम? 50-60 out of 154. और for best preparation for JRF purposes कितना पढ़ना चाहिए out of 154 sonnets? What do you think? Smart work कितना होना चाहिए? Hardly 2. Shall I compare the? एक तो यही है. एक ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा आप चेंज करके 7 एजेस ऑफ मैन पढ़ सकते हो, या फिर अकॉर्डिंग टू एग्जाम चेंज करके कुछ और पढ़ सकते हो. देन उसमें दोस्त किसके नाम याद रखने हैं. देयर आर सम सॉनेट्स जिसके सिर्फ नाम याद रखने हैं. व्हेन माय लव स्वेयर्स, टू लव्स, आई हैव कंफर्ट. या फिर शेक्सपियर के सारे ड्रामा एक तरफ, ड्रामा पब्लिश कब हुआ था वो एक तरफ. सो आई विल हेल्प यू विद दिस, दैट इफ वी आर डूइंग 2000 वर्क्स, I will be telling you that these 400 books you can't afford to miss. इनको भूल गए तो एग्जाम में मत जाना. If you don't remember the chronology of Jane Austen, I'll say मत जाओ एग्जाम में, कोई फायदा नहीं है. D.H. लॉरेंस की chronology में चिल्लाता हूँ, पढ़ो, इस बार भी आई है पेपर में as it is. मैं आपको तरीका भी बताऊंगा. If you don't remember D.H. Lawrence, just remember the first book. If you remember the first book, there are 4 options. You can be lucky enough to have at least one option where your first book is actually the first. इस बार यही हुआ. White Peacock as it is option में साफ साफ दिख रहा है. If you do not know the chronology of Raymond Williams, I'll say मत जाओ. So there are thousands of things, and the best thing that is going to help you is my experience and expertise. जो नहीं पढ़ना है वो नहीं पढ़ना है. ज्यादा से ज्यादा क्या होगा? I'll be wrong, but not drastically wrong. Suppose मैंने कहा ये नहीं आएगा, वो आ गया. लास्ट में ब्लू ह्यूमैनिटीज मैंने यहां लिखा था. रैचल कार्सन, आशीष ने मुझे बोला था कि सर एक नई स्टडी चल रही है, मैंने यहां लिखा था लेफ्ट में. आई वाज आस्किंग देम कि यार वो क्लिप ले सको तो निकाल के एक बार डाल सकते हो दैट वी डिड इट. एंड आई सेड यार ये एक्सट्रीम लेवल है, इतना नहीं आएगा. आई सेड दिस इज एक्सट्रीम and this is like out of syllabus, नहीं आएगा. So where I teach each and everything saying that कुछ भी आ सकता है, I said जाने दो, blue humanities नहीं आएगा, और वो आ गया. तो I can be wrong, but for one question max 2, but for the 98 questions I will save your time, I will save your energy. So if I tell you Pride and Prejudice पढ़ना है और Emma पढ़ना है, बाकियों के सिर्फ कैरेक्टर्स के नाम याद रखना है, that will save your time. तो अभी एंग्लो सेक्शंस में, कैडमन में, बीड में मत जाना. We have to be very much selective, right? इनकी बायोग्राफीज मत ढूंढने लग जाना जाके, कहां पैदा हुआ था, शादी किससे हुई थी. एक मेरा स्टूडेंट था आंध्र प्रदेश से, तो आई गिव काइंड ऑफ होमवर्क that who wants to teach me Anglo section. He said, sir, I want to teach Anglo section. So I was like, fine, teach. I'll give you 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, he came with like 32, 33 chronologies. This book was published, this book was published, that book was... I was wondering, I didn't even ask you to remember these dates. Like if you put effort, obviously you'll find out the dates of these anonymous books. नहीं चाहिए था. He said, sir, I will remember everything. Having the spirit is great, but you cannot. आप एग्जाम में overburdened हो जाओगे. मेरे ऐसे स्टूडेंट्स थे जिनकी ग्राफिक मेमोरी थी. ग्राफिक मेमोरी. क्लास में मैंने बहुत बार तारीफ किया, व्हाट अ मेमोरी, वाओ. वो उसको मोटिवेशन में और ले गए कि सर ने तारीफ किया है, कल से 200 डेट्स एक्स्ट्रा याद होगी. सो दे लाइक, आई कैन नॉट नेम पीपल, बट दे वर डैम प्रिपेयर्ड विद, कुछ भी पूछो सर टिप्स पे, लेकिन कॉन्सेप्ट क्लियर नहीं है. सो इफ यू मग अप, यू विल बी एबल टू आंसर 25-30 क्वेश्चंस इन अ इजी वे, बट remaining 60-70 questions, you won't even understand what they're asking. So some books to be tasted, some to be swallowed, some to be chewed and digested, right? Let's go for the next one. The famous work Juliana. Juliana is believed to be written by Senevolf. Juliana is believed to be written by Senevolf. No authentication. Most of the modern critics connect it. Juliana, religious poetry. Another poetry, Christ, and the spelling of Christ is different. H नहीं है यहाँ पे. Christ, also believed to be written by Senevolf, deals with the birth of Christ. Deals with the birth of Christ. The next author we have is Elfric. The next author we have is Elfric. Elfric wrote Lives of Saints. No questions from Elfric till now. Lives of Saints. कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं है. Elfric is also the first person to write grammar book for Old English. Name of the book is Grammar. Next, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle is a prose work anonymously written. It's a prose work written anonymously. किस चीज की? Anglo-Saxon work, prose है. Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. It's a prose work, Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. It's Anglo-Saxon history. No author, Anglo-Saxon Chronicle in prose. It was written by the time of Alfred the Great. Now, the most important thing, this chronicle gives the detail of Norman conquest. Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, 1066 Norman conquest. So, if they ask you which book details the account of Norman conquest or talks about the war of Norman conquest, yeah, war of Battle of Hastings, this is the one. Next, The Owl and the Nightingale. The Owl and the Nightingale. It's the first debate poetry. Anonymous. The first debate poetry. The debate is between Owl and the Nightingale, heard by poem's narrator. The debate between Owl and Nightingale, heard by poem's narrator. Next, The Beast Fable, Reynard the Fox. The Beast Fable, Reynard the Fox. Remember this, the Beast Fable genre was very much famous in Anglo-Saxons, will be used by Chaucer in Nun Priest's Tale. Reynard the Fox. The manuscript survived. इसमें fox के spelling में e लगेगा. Reynard the Fox. एक चीज और देख लेना, देखो, I'll tell you this thing. Debate poetry done. That was Owl and Nightingale. That's important. Debate poetry. Beast fable, when you have animal characters in your story. So when the animal play the role, you're talking about a lion, you're talking about a rabbit, you're talking about some mouse, monkey. That is beast fable. जो बचपन में हम कहानियां पढ़ते थे ना चंपक वगैरह में, तो अगर कोई जानवरों की कहानी है, that is beast fable, right? अब इसमें क्या था? रेनार्ड द फॉक्स इज द ओल्डेस्ट सर्वाइविंग मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट ऑफ फर्स्ट एवर बीस्ट फेबल. ये सर्वाइविंग है. हाँ, मतलब ये फर्स्ट एक स्टोरी है जिसका हमारे पास एक मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट बचा हुआ है, जिसका आप ये कह सकते हो दैट दिस इज द फर्स्ट एवर बीस्ट फेबल. इसके बाद आएंगे एसप्स फेबल, बट इन एसप्स फेबल बीस्ट फेबल कम है. एसप्स फेबल्स इज शॉर्ट स्टोरी. Aesop's fables, short story. बचपन में कहानी नहीं पढ़ी आपने कि monkey goes to a tiger, says that there is another tiger, tiger follows, then he says, see, so tiger looks into well and there is a reflection, so the tiger jumps in the pond or the well and dies. In African literature, these kind of stories are called trickster. Beast fable बहुत important genre है. बाद में अराउंड 13th सेंचुरी. ये फर्स्ट है. ये सर्वाइविंग मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट में फर्स्ट है. नेक्स्ट लिखो. एक उसका रेफरेंस भी दोबारा लिख लो, सी फेरर का. द पोइट्री दैट वी रोट, सी फेरर, राइट वन रेफरेंस. It is an elegy dealing with life and death. It is an elegy dealing with life and death. The philosophy is given by the sailor. Old sailor, he is going to die. So this old sailor is looking back to his life and talking about life and death. एक वॉर पोइट्री है, वो भी आपको लिखवानी है. बैटल ऑफ माल्डन. बैटल ऑफ माल्डन, नेक्स्ट वर्क. It's a war poetry. The Battle of Malden. Again, anonymous, no author. Anonymous poetry, no author. लेकिन इसमें एक खास चीज है. In this poetry is not celebrating, the author is not celebrating the victory. Author is talking about the cowardice shown by the soldiers. लड़ाई होती है और सोल्जर्स भाग जाते हैं लड़ाई से. So mention this thing. It deals with the defeat. It deals with the defeat and show of cowardice. ये एंग्लो सेक्शन एंड वाइकिंग्स की फाइट पे है. The Anglo-Saxons fought with Vikings. Anglo-Saxon army ran away. So it's a poetry written on them. Last work. Historia Regum Britannia. Let me write it for you. It's a very old work. Historia Regum Britannia. इनके ओल्ड स्टाइल स्पेलिंग्स हैं, ऐसे लिख लेना चाहिए. हिस्टोरिया रीगम ब्रिटानिया. द हिस्ट्री ऑफ किंग्स ऑफ ब्रिटेन. द हिस्ट्री ऑफ किंग्स ऑफ ब्रिटेन रिटन बाय 1136. हिस्ट्री ऑफ किंग्स ऑफ ब्रिटेन रिटन बाय जॉफ्री ऑफ मनमथ. Geoffrey of Monmouth, 1136. The first history of Britain. It's the first historical account of Britain. ठीक है, so remember this thing. It is the first history of Britain, but not trusted. क्योंकि कंटेम्प्रेरी हिस्ट्री से जब रिलेट किया जाता है तो इट इज टोटली बायस्ड. दैट्स व्हाई पीपल डोंट टेक इट सीरियसली. बट वी हैव अ नेम, वी हैव द ऑथर, सो जस्ट रिमेंबर दिस थिंग. ऑल डन? एनी क्वेश्चंस? किसी का कोई भी क्वेश्चन है? बाकी ओल्ड नॉर्स लैंग्वेज या हाई जर्मन लैंग्वेज इन सब में मत पढ़ना. एक और वर्क ऐड करना तो कर लो. लेमन्स ब्रुट. लायमन्स ब्रट, नो चांस, आएंगे नहीं ये. That is also history of Britain. That is also Chronicle of Britain. It's a poem. It's a poem, Chronicle of Britain. So we are done. Anglo section is आपकी complete हो गई है. If you have any questions, ask me. This age is big age. क्योंकि इसमें you'll be going for the complete historical details, then you'll be going for contemporary authors, and Chaucer himself has a great career. It's a big span of his career. We will be dealing with his Italian books, we'll be dealing with his French books, we'll be dealing with his English book. And Chaucer is the first writer, and obviously being the first writer, whatever he has written is the subject of our study. Chaucer की French books भी हम डिटेल में करेंगे with all important dates, facts. Then all his Italian books, all of these books are important. We have to deal with every book. चाहे वो हाउस ऑफ फेम हो, चाहे वो कोई भी ऐसी बुक हो, ट्रॉलिस एंड क्रेसिडा, या फिर पार्लियामेंट ऑफ द फाउल्स, कहीं से भी क्वेश्चन आ सकते हैं. लेजेंड ऑफ गुड वुमेन, वहाँ से क्वेश्चन है. एंड वंस वी आर डन विद हिज करियर, हिज स्पैन ऑफ दीज बुक्स will enter in English, and Chaucer's English book, famous book, is Canterbury Tales. Canterbury Tales अपने आप में बहुत बड़ी किताब है. It will take time. You will be having bombarding facts, information, knowledge की bombarding होगी. ठीक है? So be prepared with this. आज तो सिर्फ English section को ही खत्म करके छोड़ देते हैं आपको, so that you can study, prepare. Chaucer's Canterbury Tales has lot of stories. Around 30-31 characters. All of these characters are supposed to tell stories. You have around 24 stories. So first these characters, their introduction, their uniqueness, then their stories, and then all important things related to the stories. So writer एक है बोलने के लिए, but सिर्फ चौसर के आप आराम से 60-70 works करोगे. All the characters, their uniqueness. They'll ask questions like this. Whose face was like a red cherubim? Who used to eat garlic? Who had nasal voice? तो ये सारी individual details आएंगी. Who loved hunting? Who was as fresh as the month of May? Then their stories. Who told the story of Lothely Lady? Who tells the story of patient Griselda? Who tells the death, where the death can be found? These kind of stories. So be prepared, क्योंकि कल से आपका एक और अच्छा वाला content शुरू हो जाएगा. We'll be in 4th gear tomorrow onwards. Any questions? No? So take this, Age of Chaucer, we're done. See you next class. Speed और तेज हो जाएगी टाइम के साथ. अभी फिर भी ये 2 बज रहे हैं, कोई बात नहीं, चले जाओ. Then we'll start setting you free by 3:30. अभी तो लंच के बाद छोटी सी क्लास है, खत्म हो जाएगा. And जैसे जैसे हम एग्जाम के पास पहुंचते जाएंगे, मे बी बाय द एंड ऑफ अप्रैल और मई आपकी क्लासेस रात को भी चलेंगी 10 o'clock. Those who live in GSRI, those who live nearby, और those who are going to join, जो भी हम सबको recommend करते हैं, stay around. If you are here only, it will be easy for you to take offline classes. Those who are not able to come in evening classes, they will be getting the live link. वो उनको free of cost मिलेगा क्योंकि उनका हक है. ठीक है? तो जो नहीं आ सकता है उसको शाम को 7 बजे क्लास का लिंक मिलेगा. और वो क्लासेस का टाइमिंग हो जाएगा 8-8 घंटे, 9-9 घंटे. सुबह से लगोगे आप 10 बजे से मेरे साथ. So be ready. You are going to have a war. See you all. Take care. कल क्या, हाँ कल इलेक्शंस हैं. कल आपकी क्लास नहीं है, ऑफिस खुला रहेगा. Even I'll be here by 11. लेकिन क्लास नहीं होगी आपकी क्योंकि आपको अलग अलग जगह से आना है और इट्स ऑल इलेक्शन एंड बहुत सारे सिक्योरिटी इशूज. मेट्रो आई एम नॉट श्योर चलेगी नहीं चलेगी, तो कल आपकी क्लास नहीं है. बच गए आप? ठीक है, ग्रेट. बी रेडी विद रैपिड फायर. परसों वाली क्लास से पहले आपको सब आना चाहिए. यार ध्यान नहीं दिया मैंने यार, पढ़ा देना चाहिए था 2 घंटे और कल की क्लास से पहले। चलो कोई नहीं, स्टार्टिंग क्लास है। मैं कंटिन्यू करूँगा, टेंशन मत लो, जाने दो, अभी घिस जाओगे। एक चीज़ और भी है, एक चीज़ याद पता क्या, देखो व्हेन यू आर, जैसे व्हेन यू गो टू जिम और आपका ट्रेनर अगर समझदार है तो पहले दिन आपको 100 किलो नहीं उठवाएगा, क्योंकि पहले दिन अगर आपने 100 kg उठा दिया ना तो फिर अगले 10 दिन आप मूव लगा लगा के घर पे रहोगे। तो आपकी बात सही है, करवा दीजिए, पर होगा ये कि अगले 2 घंटे में ना आप 100 फैक्ट्स लिख के जाओगे इफ आई स्टार्ट चौसर, क्योंकि चौसर के साथ सारे फैक्ट्स आने शुरू हो जाएंगे। लैंग्वेज कब आई, कौन सी लैंग्वेज बनी, किसको उसने इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज बनाया, कंटेम्प्रेरी कौन था, किंग कौन था, एडवर्ड थर्ड, रिचर्ड सेकंड, हेनरी फोर्थ, फिर उनकी टाइमिंग लिखोगे, फिर 100 ईयर्स वॉर में बैटल ऑफ क्रेसी, बैटल ऑफ पोइटियस, बैटल ऑफ एगिमकोर्ट, सबकी लाइंस लिखते जाओगे। फिर तुम्हें लगेगा कि मैं पहले एंग्लो सेक्शन याद करूं या ये याद करूं। सो थोड़ा सा स्लो चलते हैं, बाकी जा कहाँ रहे हो, दिस इज माई जंगल, डोंट वरी, सी यू ऑल।